Welcome to Real Estate Coaching Radio, starring award-winning real estate coaches and #1 international best-selling authors, Tim and Julie Harris. This is the #1 daily radio show for realtors looking for a no BS, authentic, real-time coaching experience. What's really working in today's market, how to generate more leads, make more money, and have more time for what you love in your life. And now your hosts, Tim and Julie Harris.
3, 2, 1, and we're back. And it is August the 31st. We are on day 55 of our Harris U.S. tour. We've been to 22 different states. Have we been to 22?
22. I counted yesterday in the car.
Have we really?
Yeah.
So as we drive down to Atlanta this weekend, that will be...
I counted it. Yeah.
That's including.
Yeah.
Okay, so
including
22.
Georgia, yes.
Yeah, incredible. So it's been, well, I shouldn't be talking in past tense at this point, but I have to say this has been a remarkable, extraordinary adventure around the country that Julie and I will be talking about and thinking about and sharing stories with all of you for years to come on this podcast. But in the meanwhile, we are going to get back to what we've been talking about with regards to how to be a introvert, how to be a very, very successful salesperson who's also an introvert in a world that seems to be dominated by extroverts. I think that's the best way to say it.
Yes. My short version is how to be the introvert's guide to being a real estate rock star. And, there's different degrees of introverts. There's people who are, more of the hermit, basement dweller, cave dweller, really, really don't go out much.
Why are you looking at me when you say that?
I don't know. And then there's people who are not really on that end of the spectrum, but they just maybe are a little bit, what I call as a coach, conversationally uncomfortable.
That's right.
But there's degrees in between, right?
Yep, absolutely. Oh, by the way, we are in Murphy, North Carolina at our cabin here in Murphy. And I have to say, Murphy, North Carolina is unbelievably beautiful. This whole section of the country, those of you who are from this section of the country, you know what we're talking about, in the Smoky Mountains. Now that Julie and I have thoroughly explored basically everywhere, right?
Except the Northeast. We'll do that on a different trip.
Right. But now that we've thoroughly explored, I think what would arguably be equally, a lot of people would consider Big Sur in Central California equally as beautiful as this. I have to say this is at least as equally as beautiful as that part of the country, if not more. The biggest difference being obviously out there you have an ocean, right?
Yes,
and here you have mountains and you have trees and you have, the occasional, black bear that supposedly roams through your property. Yeah. We have a little competition going in our family, our little triumvirate with Zoe. Whoever sees the bear first, supposedly there's a bear in the neighborhood. We should have told you that. Whoever sees the bear first and gets a picture, and Zoe does have a non-functioning iPhone, though it does take pictures, gets to name it and earns a $100 bonus.
Yes. So we'll see. Game on.
And we talked to our neighbor, Kevin and Vicky, and they were telling us that there is a black bear. He does occasionally come through the property very, very late at night. And so Zoe has been diligently waiting for her opportunity to earn her $100 and name the bear.
She has all of the flashlights found and assembled, ready to rumble. So, yes, but we always like to report what we see out our window on this trip. And we are currently looking at a beautiful ridge, which is going to be a sledding hill, I guess, in a few months probably. But, thousands of just gorgeous greenery, trees, pine trees, maple trees. I know there's a lot of oak out there. And we're also being rained on by Hurricane Ida.
It does surprise me. I know this area has really taken off, especially post-COVID, as far as appreciation. And, this area, it's basically a hot seller's market. But it really honestly does surprise me that this part of the country, now that, we've traveled and thoroughly investigated, hasn't been more desirous over the generations, because it really is incredible. And if you think from a proximity, and now I realize that, anything that most people would consider civilization is a good solid 2 hours away.
Yeah, this is pretty remote, really.
Yeah, but really, even with that said, there's so much density of humans in this part of the country that for this not to have been, at this point, I don't know what the word would be, but for it to still be so beautiful and so natural is a real
Undeveloped.
Gift. Undeveloped, yeah. And so folks, if you guys are looking for a real, I think, different experience, definitely consider the Smoky Mountains as far as a place to travel. And you will probably fall in love with it just like Julie and I did. I would not be surprised at all if you did, because between the people and the scene, just the scenery and the sense of we don't have internet at our cabin yet. So Julie was feeling a little bit anxious because she does certain things in the morning with the business and the coaching business. And, she has her routine of 5 or 6 things that she does every morning. we've got a relatively large coaching business. We have, over 30 people that work for us, and you want to check in to make sure, Julie's mission control basically. And with no internet, she was getting a little anxious, and I could sense it, and she was getting a little testy.
You know what our people are doing.
Right, exactly. Well, it's your habit basically, and you are analytical.
Indeed, and one of our staff also has COVID. I want to check on him.
Thomas COVID, and you are an introvert, and you like your schedule.
I like my routine.
But what did we do? We went on a walk around the property. It's 130 acres. And we didn't walk all 130 acres, but we went on a walk around the property, and you came back, and you were sanguine as sanguine can be.
It's all good.
That's the gift of nature.
It is. That's true. It's a good way to reset your mind. And even walking in the rain, I mean, it's really lovely, and it's so green. And visited the ponds and saw a lot of cool wildlife, birds and stuff like that. So I'm sure we'll see more once it stops raining.
So Zoe, who's an extrovert and a constant chatterbox, on our walk this morning, did you notice, because it was so quiet and serene out, and the only thing you heard was birds?
And Zoe?
She stopped talking.
She did.
Yeah,
after a while.
I looked over at you, and I was like, this kid is not talking our ears off. What is going on here?
She okay?
Well, it's because she, without knowing it, was basically, bonding with the environment, which was exactly what I was hoping would happen. So she has the diversity of experiences.
It was a good idea.
She grows up in the Ritz-Carlton, Puerto Rico right now, and for her to come here now and, experience this type of life with these types of amazing people, I think will really create an interesting human.
Hopefully. Yes. Too soon to tell.
That's
but
right.
I think so.
Well, so listen, that's what we are doing on this podcast this week, is we're talking to you guys about how to win, even if you're an introvert in a world that's really, especially in an industry that's seemingly dominated by extroverts. And if you want to learn more about our coaching program, remember, guys, the easiest thing for you to do is just text the word success to 47372. Text the word success to 47372. Or you can just go over to timandjulieharris.com and click on coaching and click on Premier, and then you will be off to the races, and you can learn more about our coaching program. Premier Coaching is the perfect program for all of you guys to get started in. It's absolutely the best way for you to learn more about what we're offering. And Harris Premier Coaching really is a complete A to Z system. It's a perfect complement for our best-selling book. Oh, and I should say this too. Thank you for those of you who have been sending us pictures of our book in Barnes & Noble. We have been finding it in Barnes & Nobles as we stopped in various ones across the country. And even to this day, even though the book's been out for a couple years, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It is such a thrill to see this book that Julie and I took so long to write sitting on the bookshelves. And most of the bookshelves will have one or two in stock because they're selling out. So if you've not picked up not picked up Harris Rules, it's almost 500 5-star reviews on Amazon. Well, frankly, Amazon's the easiest place to get it, and they'll deliver it to you obviously the second day. Mm-hmm. So we are going to be picking up where we left off yesterday, and we are on point number 5.
Yes. So this is all about having a plan and studying how to kind of get out of your own way if you're on that conversationally uncomfortable spectrum. So point number 5, in new situations, actually have a plan. If it's a tough competitive listing appointment and you haven't been on many of those, use your pre-qualification script, your pre-listing package, arrive early, be practiced with what you're doing on your presentation. Previewing property will give you a lot of confidence in your pricing. It'll give you an edge. You want to have a plan. You don't want to just fall back on what some of you have been told. Well, it's okay. Just expect to take it 50% of the time. That's not okay. What is okay is to follow, we did a whole podcast about this last week, the 7-step listing process. Mm-hmm. So knowledge equals confidence and ignorance equals fear. And if you're already nervous, adding ignorance to that fear will basically lose you the appointment.
Exactly, because one thing that analytical people or introverted people hate the most is winging it. And for the most part, they're terrible at it. So on this podcast, Julie and I are both introverts by nature, but Julie's definitely more analytical than me. And she's the one that's in charge of making sure we always have content. Now, occasionally, I will not necessarily
preempt my content.
I'll preempt her content. If there was something happening that, maybe I'd seen from all of we have thousands of coaching clients all over the country, and we're picking up thousands of coaching clients all over the world. And when I start to see a confluence of concern around a specific topic or topics, mm-hmm. we're going to preempt whatever we'd prepared for you guys so we can drill down on that. And that might be, market gyrations. It might be, something that happened in the news. It might be things like that. We do avoid politics like the plague and what isn't political nowadays, it seems. But for the most part, Julie will have, as this is, I'm looking at it now, and mm-hmm. she's getting a little mad at me because I'm not sticking to her script, and we're moving on to point number 6. But the point is that is ultimately how you win. If you're an introvert, especially if you're analytical, you have to be prepared, over-prepared, right? follow one course until successful. Focus. And that's what a coaching program is all about. It's leaving nothing to chance. It's a tried and true tested system that's going to get you from point A to point Z the quickest with the least amount of pain and hassle and the least amount of having to worry about losing, because you're going to know what to say and how to say it. That's the whole point of joining a coaching program. And look, I know the coaching programs aren't for all of you. There's no doubt. Some of you are not that serious about your careers yet, but you will be. So it's just not your time yet. But for the vast majority of you that don't want to waste time, please do consider becoming a coaching client and do text the word success to 47372.
Yes, so here's a secret for some of my introverted friends. The naturally extroverted people tend to be a bit less careful on appointments because they're relying on their personality and they've won a lot of times, by default. But you can launch your sneak attack by being better, faster, smarter, more polished, and more poised. So for example, somebody that might be more gregarious than you, but really wasn't that careful on the CMA, and then you come in and you present some very specific facts and are simply more professional. Maybe you used your pre-qualification questions, but they didn't. Maybe you remembered to close. You have to actually ask for the business, and they just assumed that they had it when they walked out the door. So they might have been more, more outgoing than you, but you were actually more professional.
So you made this point, and you're living proof of it, frankly. It is easier for an introverted, analytical person to train themselves, dare I say, act as if they're gregarious and more demonstrative and more outgoing than it is for an extroverted, naturally extroverted person to be more detail-oriented and analytical.
Absolutely.
So it's easier for somebody like Julie, and like many of you, frankly, to learn to be more of a performer, learn to be essentially what the sellers might expect as far as your extrovertedness. You can bring it out in you. It's just acting. Julie used the examples yesterday, and it's obvious if you guys think about this. Some of the best actors on planet Earth are big-time introverted people, and they've learned to be more extroverted. Julie used the example of Johnny Depp. Well, I mean, one of Julie's favorite actors is James Bond.
Daniel Craig.
Who she met, who also was a big dork, introverted dork. And
totally.
I say this being somewhat of an introverted dork myself.
Yeah.
And he was definitely introverted. And so what happens in those cases is they know they are studied. They're not only going to study their scripts and know what to say, but they're going to get down into the minutia and they're going to start paying attention to little nuanced differences. And if they don't win, they're not going to just brush it off. They're going to go back, and the smart ones are going to go back and they're going to figure out why, dare I say, analyze why they didn't win, and they're going to go back and change their approach. Whereas a person that's more extroverted, who's just used to being the life of the party, used to having people just gravitate towards them, they're not going to take that opportunity when they don't win to step back and figure out why they didn't win. They're just going to write it off, and they're going to let their egos dominate their thought process. Oh, the other agent must have told them a higher price or a lower commission, or
they'll just say, well, we just didn't hit it off.
Right, exactly. And if there is a little slight echo, guys, it's because we are in our new master bedroom here in Murphy, and there is no sound deadening, so just bear with us.
That's right, not the normal studio. All right, so point number 6, give yourself mini breaks. This is not during a listing presentation. This is during social events, social situations, so that you can recharge. Take a break, walk around outside, take a restroom break if you're at a restaurant. Avoid too much alcohol and too much caffeine, because either one of those can knock you off of your well-planned game. But allow yourself that break. Go refill the cup.
You used parties as an example, and this is something that I think I see a lot of analytical people struggling with. They get so if it's a group of people, obviously it's a party, and you have a tendency, people will have a tendency who are introverted, analytical, to gravitate towards other people and not detach from them. In other words, they're not going out there networking and talking with other people.
They'll talk with the one person they knew at the party.
Exactly.
Or who invited them.
And they'll be in the corner, and they'll be wallflowers the whole time, and they won't go out there, network, and get to know more people and practice their Jedi mind trick, like Ford, the basic, family, occupation, recreation, dreams. So Julie, keeping us practical, which is our, theme of our coaching business. Yeah. When you are in those, because you used to have that issue, right?
Sure.
Whereas I feel like the exact opposite. If I talk with someone for too long, like I'm wanting to meet more people naturally.
Right.
And you are the exact opposite. And when you and I go to professional social events or social events, period, we generally speaking, we don't hang out with each other. We'll go in different, so we can meet more people. We just do that naturally. But we train to do that.
Yes.
How do you avoid getting stuck talking to a small group of people and not
question.
networking?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it is a tendency to do that because you're a little bit more in your comfort zone when you're talking to people you already know. So first thing I'll say is it does get easier, but only when you practice this. You can't just, try an event out every 6 months and expect to get better. So what I used to do, and what I do even now when we're out, amongst friends or whoever, is of course I'll acknowledge that person, talk to them, ask them a few forward questions, kind of check in, take their temperature, make sure that we chatted. And then I'll look for somebody else to introduce them to if I know somebody else and get them talking, and then that releases me from the conversation. Now, if I don't happen to know somebody, then I'm going to ask them, how did you come to this event? How do you know so-and-so who invited both of us? Then they'll talk about somebody, and they'll almost always then introduce me to somebody new that I'll start talking to. And then the chain goes on.
And you can do that if you bring another person into the conversation. And if you do have those people that are anchors in a room and they're going to make it very difficult for you to walk away without feeling rude, Julie's technique right there worked perfectly. Just invite other people over and introduce them. And sometimes it might take a couple people to introduce them. Or, oh, hey, Julie, I want to introduce you to Bob. Bob and you have something in common I think you'll find really surprising.
That's right.
And then take it over. Hey, Julie, meet Bob. You and Bob both have a kid named Zoe, right? Or whatever.
Yes.
And then basically you can let the conversation start and then get out of Dodge.
Yeah, but, there's something to almost, I think that people who are naturally more social don't think about this stuff as much. I find it helpful to almost make it a game, like you've got to embrace why you are at that function. You're not there to just go do your time. That you might as well not show up if you're going to do that. You are there to expand your center of influence. You are there so that you will be the person that somebody knows when they have that decision to make. Remember, all those studies always say when you're going to hire somebody to do, to list your house, the first thing you ask yourself is who do I already know? Your job is to become the person they already know. That gives you a tremendous advantage. All of you guys know that because when you're competing against somebody that's tight in their center of influence, it's a lot harder to compete with. So be that person.
And go back a couple podcasts, guys, and re-listen this whole series on being an introvert, because the other thing is that we talk about is that, again, never talk about yourself. You have to, but when you have to socially, it's awkward if you don't in some cases. But avoid talking about yourself. And the best way to make someone not just like you, but love you is make eye contact with them. There's all these extra social boundaries and rules that have come into place, because of COVID, right? Most people are wanting to, depending on where you are, frankly, in the country, it's a fist bump or it's a nothing. Sometimes people just don't even, and that's going to be, unfortunately, something that's going to be trained into different people it's going to last generations.
Yeah, but you should know what your market kind of is accepting of at the time.
Yeah.
So you don't freak people out or unfreak people out.
Well, I mean, as we've traveled,
and it'll change too.
As we've traveled to different parts of the country, the more rural areas like we are now, it's like COVID never existed.
Yeah.
And they, matter of fact, had virtually no COVID here in Murphy. And you travel outside of...
but then you go to San Francisco and you better mask up and you
not
better
just
not
mask
be
up,
hugging each other.
Full hazmat suit.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's how people are just off the... But the point is that the key is when you're talking to people, make sure that you don't talk about yourself. And that's a bad habit that a lot of people have. Frankly, that's a bad habit that most extroverted people have. Don't talk about yourself. Ask questions about them and ask follow-up questions showing that you listened to what they said. And one of the things that you can do to really make them love you is when you ask them questions. Remember, it's family, occupation, recreation, dreams. Forward. When you're asking them questions about their family, don't just ask them question after question after question after question like they're taking a survey. Ask them a question, then ask them another question based on what they just said. You can relate to them a little bit, but do not spin and make the conversation about yourself. As soon as you do, you're going to lose that relationship. Because people are naturally, next time they see you, or frankly, even if they think of you, they're going to naturally remember the experience they had of someone showing sincere interest in them. Guys, there is nothing more powerful when you're wanting to be have that it factor, that certain je ne sais quoi, Bob walked into the room and everyone just, gravitate towards Bob. You've heard this sort of mythical quality that some people have. And here's what the mythical quality is. They sometimes when they walk up to you, they'll put a hand, though you got to be careful on this too, right? But they put a hand on your arm like this. And then sometimes they'll put two hands on, so there's the double handshake, right? They'll shake hands and they'll put their other hand, like if you're right-handed, you shake their left hand, then you put your left hand on their shoulder, and then you take a little step back. And then when you're talking to them, you look at them. You don't let your eyes wander.
You're not checking your phone. You're not looking around. You're not seeing who else is in the room. You're not doing all that stuff.
Exactly. And so here's the extra thing. I want you to think about this. when you are in any kind of social environment, it has become accepted to be rude. And what do I mean by that? People, it used to be when you are conversing, like sort of getting along with humans 101, is to not allow your mind to wander or not look at somebody or look. When I'm talking to somebody and I'm concentrating, I always look off to the side. And a lot of you do the same thing. It's a natural characteristic of communication. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm suggesting here is, as especially you guys of the younger generations who've normalized having your phone as an appendage. It's almost like an extra arm, right? And it's this crying, screaming baby that needs constant care and feeding and attention. Well, the suggestion to you is, especially if you're younger, if you really want to have something special, an undefinable quality, don't be like your millennial brethren or your Generation Z sisterin, right? And don't allow yourself to be distracted by these things, and have direct focus with somebody and practice good old-fashioned human-to-human communication. You will have such an undefinable quality that people will not understand why it is that so many people are attracted to you. And the only reason is because you might not be somebody who gives much of a hooey about other humans, and you're not in all this.
Not your thing.
And all this that we're describing to you seems like it's a bridge too far. Well, here's an interesting little psychological fact. The more you practice it, the more natural it'll become. And the more natural it becomes, the more like you it becomes. Because some of you are so dug in to being introverted dorks who have like 3 people in their lives and everything else basically is gathered from, digital means. That's not how you're ever going to flourish in life, not just professionally as a salesperson, but in life in general. The more relationships you have, look, we're not saying have a bunch of fake relationships, but the more relationships you have, the more people you can communicate with, 100% of the time, the happier person you're going to be, the richer, fuller life you're going to have, the more opportunities you're going to create and manifest for yourself. Hopefully all that makes sense.
Yes, that actually was point number 7. Cultivate the habit of listening well. Many introverts are too focused on what to say next and miss the finer details of what the other person's saying. The cure for this is to repeat what you just heard without overly doing that. We've all had conversations where that gets awkward, right? But you can adopt phrases like, what I hear you saying is, or I think what you're saying is, I understand, tell me more about that. Create conversation, but actually listen.
Your favorite is tell me more about that. That's one you use.
Yeah.
And that really does work. So if someone's, again, let's just make this practical. You're talking to someone about their family. And they mentioned that they're from here in, Murphy, North Carolina, and they, this, the other thing, and they have people that live here and people live there. And then you could say, well, tell me more about that. When you say you guys have lived here for generations, are you talking about all the way back to when Irish and Scottish people were migrating here, or like how long is that kind of thing? And then they'll give you more information. You can keep on drilling down. And even if you feel like you're not being genuine, you will not feel like you're being genuine because you're probably too introverted and probably too analytical. But the more you practice it, the more it's going to – don't say to yourself, in other words, oh, I can't do that. I feel like I'm faking it. You have to fake it or act like a really great actor does until it becomes natural. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, if you went to the gym today and you decide you're going to start figuring out how to run, 10-minute miles, then 6-minute miles. You're going to just figure out you're going to be faking it for a long damn time until you get your psychology and your physiology in alignment with your, with the goal of accomplishing that, really great mile for yourself. And that's going to be the same way when you're communicating with people. So expect it, depending on, using my gym analogy, depending on how out of shape you are, expect it to be hard. Expect it not to feel natural. Expect every ounce of your body, every cell in your body to want to fight against your desire to essentially get in shape and run that really fast mile. Expect it to not be easy, and don't succumb to your ego saying, "Oh, this is too hard," because that's just nothing but being lazy at the end of the day.
Giving up too soon. So, point number 8: force yourself. This is one they have a lot of trouble with sometimes. Force yourself to not just be good, but be great on the phone. Yes, that's right. It's unavoidable in real estate. If you're more comfortable in person, set an immediate appointment to meet in person. Even if it's for coffee, maybe it's a Zoom call, but you've got to better understand the prospect of the client's situation. You can't hide out. And it should be a goal, not just of introverts, but really everyone in real estate, to embrace the phone, be on the phone. When in doubt, pick up the phone. Don't have all these elaborate rules that just because they texted you, you can only text them back. Does that make sense?
So there it is. That's another little, I hope you guys are thinking about what Julie just said. So it goes back to communication. When everybody else is hiding behind ones and zeros, right? Everyone's doing things digitally, texting. And I love digital. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. I love texting. But when the whole world is hiding behind anything digital, the way you excel and you rise to the top is you call people. You go and have communications with people. Don't let the current, internet guru marketing people convince you that direct one-on-one communication won't be always the dominant form of communication amongst humans. It always will be. And anyone who tells you different is only telling you that because they're trying to probably sell you something. But more importantly, they probably just haven't ever learned how to do it themselves. So definitely have direct communications. And here's an example. I'm a seller. I've now called 3 different agents. I maybe have seen signs. I've got a referral. Whatever. I put all these calls out or whatever. Email, doesn't matter. I've communicated with 3 different agents. The first 2 agents, they get back with me in their own due time. Here it is in mountain time, so it might be the next day. Or, what Kevin told me yesterday, how we call it island time in Puerto Rico? They call it mountain time here. I
believe it.
Yeah. So basically what he's saying is nothing happens fast here.
Yeah.
Well, in any event, so let's say the first 2 agents sort of lackadaisically circle back around, get a hold of you, but they do it digitally. They return an email, maybe they text the seller, but you got that lead and you called them back urgently. Like within 5 minutes of getting the lead, you called them back. Don't you think immediately that's going to have an effect on that seller with regards to who they're going to want to hire to be their listing agent? Don't you think that in itself, especially if you backfill it with our pre-listing pack and then you follow our listing presentation, that will win you the listing even if you're a brand new agent? And so that's the kind of thing that you guys have to be keeping in mind when it comes to winning, when it comes to actually winning consistently, when it comes to having ever increasing levels of success. The secret sauce is to keep things so that you are going to be furiously fast. You're going to be urgent. But when you communicate with people, you're knowing what to say and how to say it. You're not winging it. You're not faking it. You're not pretending. You're not relying on your ability to read the tea leaves or the strength of your personality. So this is and we have several more points we're looking forward to sharing with you guys the rest of the week. And I look out the window and we were going to give you guys another point, but we are here in Murphy, North Carolina. We do not have internet connection. We have to go to our next door neighbor's house and use their internet connection. And Hurricane Ida is starting to show up here and the clouds are getting dark. And I'm afraid if we don't save the show,
wrap it up
and send it off, we will not have a live podcast today. And that would be sad.
Yes, it would.
So God bless all of you. You guys have a fantastic day. And we'll talk with you on the show tomorrow.